Well, hello there, journeyers. Alexis Brooks here from Higher Journeys, back with another episode of Conscious Commentary. Hope you all are doing well wherever you may be on this little blue planet. Well, speaking of planets, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the planet Mercury. Because as you probably have guessed by now, if you're into this sort of thing, of course, we are in what is called Mercury Retrograde. Some people say retrograde Mercury. Either way, the connotation for many is, oh boy, oh, not again. Same for me. And I'll tell you, this is what we're going to talk about. So let me just set the table here, because so many people are talking about it seems particularly in the last, I don't know, even couple of years, how it seems the intensity of the retrograde period has been increasing exponentially. I would agree. There's a whole sort of theory around that. And I'm actually not going to get into that aspect today, because enough with the doom and gloom. Yes, it can be a trickster. We know. We don't necessarily understand completely what's happening, although I'm doing my best to try to kind of feel into it and understand it in context. But rather than focus on what's not right in our lives, oftentimes with a retrograde, let's talk about how it can work for you, how it can be positively utilized. That was the inspiration that I had after going through, my own stuff, everything from communications to technology, the usual fare, the usual menu items, right? That tend to be up in arms, or we up in arms with it during Mercury retrograde. But it's interesting. Let me first say this synchronistically, because we're going to get into this idea of reflection. Synchronistically, the last conscious commentary that I did, if you heard it, was about reflection. Remember, we talked about the importance of procuring from the past things that we can bring into our present through the active reflection that can help enhance our lives. Little did I know that a week or so later, this was last week, a week later, or days later, we would be in Mercury retrograde, which, by the way, before we get into the meat of this, I want to say, I tend to not anticipate certain planetary cycles, because I love the idea of trying to allow myself to intuit or feel into these cycles. I mean, we are linked to the planet. We're linked to the universe. We're linked to the galaxy. We're linked to the solar system. We are. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but just something that I have learned to do. I try to feel into when it's a full moon or a new moon, and particularly a retrograde. And that was, this time was no exception, because I was seeing problems with my technology more than normal. Of course, we always have some glitches going on when we're talking about artificial intelligence, but more than usual. And so I thought, it's a retrograde. I can feel it. I can tell. And lo and behold, I looked it up. That's what I do. I'll feel into it. I'll say, I think we're there. And invariably it will be. That was the case here. So just a little tip before we really get into this. Always, we have so many tools at the tips of our fingers at any given time. You want to learn something, you'll look it up. You want to find out about something, look it up. But particularly when it has to do with natural, maybe not so natural, that's another story, but cycles, planetary cycles, things like that. This is how our ancestors, particularly the indigenous people, survived, based on their internal antenna, something I talked about with Nassim Haramein a few weeks back in Los Angeles. But it's a great little exercise to do for yourself, to try to reestablish a link with these cycles. We are inextricably linked to them. Let's use it. So don't look up when the next retrograde will be. See if you can feel into it. See if you can kind of determine, based on your own your inner sense. What else can I say? So that's a little tip for y'all out there if you want to try it. Now, here's what I want to get into. As I said, how do we make Mercury retrograde, or retrograde Mercury, work in our favor? The first thing I want to say before we get into what I think might be the answer to this and by the way, I don't think I'm the first one to talk about it, but it's something that I've pondered. I want to refer back to some great information that my friend and colleague, PMH Atwater, who you hear me mention a lot, who I just had a wonderful phone conversation with yesterday. She is just brilliant when it comes to sleuthing these astrological cycles. She is professionally trained as an astrologer, as well as, of course, a near-death researcher. But when it comes to the retrogrades particularly, she's got some very interesting things to say. I may have read this to you all before in a previous conscious commentary, because we've done stuff on retrograde in the past. Not from this angle, however. But let me preface by reading this short bit to you, how she describes what this really is, and then we'll kind of take off from there. So let me quote. She says, first, let's talk about what is meant by retrograde motion. Watching planets in their orbit, there is a time when each of them appears to be going backwards. Not true. It's just an optical illusion caused by the energetic interplay between that planet and Earth. Retrograde periods can be charted, are normal, and last for differing periods of time. What has been noted, however, with citizens of planet Earth is that we tend to act, think, and have our being a little differently when retrogrades occur. And that's because, this is a big one, retrograde motion means inner directed, not outside activity, but inner activity. We live, however, in an outer directed world. We hurry and scurry and meet deadlines and attend meetings and fly and drive and climb. What happens when the smooth direction of busy society, business, finances suddenly turns south, and what we just depended on now seems sluggish, even uncooperative? We panic. We lose our temper. We have accidents, or we get sick. We have forgotten as a society how to ebb and flow in life as nature does. Nothing is straight-lined in nature. Energy curves. End quote. There's a lot that's said there, guys, and this struck me when I initially read it back in the summer. This was put out in her newsletter and still does. I often reflect on this passage, and this has been said, expressed in different ways from different people over the course of time, that this is not an actual moving the planet actually going backwards. Obviously not. It is an optical illusion. It has to do with it's relative to our placement on this planet, or the placement of the planet Earth itself and what it appears. But translated esoterically, it denotes introspection, inner activity, not outer. It's actually something that I am certain can work for us. Somebody said something to me the other day. In fact, I'll tell you who it was. It was Barry Eaton, my buddy, veteran broadcaster in Australia, who I actually was just on his show a day or two ago. And we were talking about this nasty retrograde. Yeah. It's nasty. And some feel that this one's particularly nasty. Again, not going to focus on that. But what we agreed is that, and he said this first, he said, words are very revelational. Anything that starts with re. Think about it. Retrograde. It's time to reflect, reevaluate, review, revisit. And most importantly, I would say, that these are my words, reunite with the inner self, the higher self. If what is appearing is going in the opposite direction, going south, as PMH just said in her passage, would this not be a time to really dial into and turn up the volume of the right brain, the intuitive side? I want to talk about that in a minute as well. So this is what has occurred to me, particularly because I have found that this specific period, I believe it started, is it March 5th? Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it's going to span, it'll go, it's usually about 3 weeks. So this will be going till roughly March 28th, 29th, something like that. Forgive me if I'm off by a day or so. So we got a little ways to go as this show is airing, still at the beginning stages of retrograde. But in the the wonkiness, some people call it, it's an interesting word, the wonkiness of retrograde periods, I thought, okay, this just does not make sense to me. There's got to be something that can be harnessed from this this time period, because there always is something to be gleaned. And so I started thinking about that. Bottom line is, I just started thinking. I started reflecting. I started reflecting on some of the things that had been going on in my life that have been, not so great. We all have those things at times, including the technology breaking down, importing camera footage from Conscious Life Expo that just kept on aborting. Okay, we won't get into that because I'm so tempted to still talk about what's not going right. But it gave me the opportunity to say, okay, Alexis, okay, chill out, sit down, take a breath, take 2 or 3, and let's not act hastily based on, or react, even though that's a word, based on what's going on. Let's reflect. How could I do something differently? Should I make a decision about something now? If my camera continues to abort this program on this computer, no worries. I'm not going to get upset. Maybe I'll put it on my laptop and maybe it'll work there. And it did. I think we actually add fuel to the fire. Sure, I do think that there is definitely a propensity for gaffes, particularly when we're dealing with each other and interfacing with each other organically, synthetically, through technology. Because look at what we're doing. We're not interfacing with nature. We're interfering. Freudian slip. We're both interfering oftentimes and interfacing with each other on a surface level. So it has been said before that this is a great time to pull in interactivity, evaluate, reevaluate. I got to say it again, retrograde. The clues are in the words, guys, if we really think about what we're saying. Now, I'm probably going to be repeating this a few times because this is really the point. But why does it seem, now this is the conundrum here. This is where the litmus test comes in. I don't know about you, but now let me take a step back for a minute. Typically, the things that we are told to try to avoid like the plague when we're in a retrograde period are, contract signing, making big decisions during retrograde, making a move, getting a new job or leaving a job or whatever. Nothing definitive. Keep it loose. Okay, got that. So why does it seem, let me know if this is the case for you, that invariably when we're in a retrograde period, I don't know about you, but it seems like everything presents itself at that time. Oh, new job opportunity, new contract, new this, something's going on that I need to make a decision. And sometimes you're like, I can't wait 3 weeks. Are you kidding me? You're looking at the calendar and let's say the opportunity that you think is of a lifetime comes down. What do? Oh my gosh. That darn retrograde again? Does that happen for you? Happens for me all the time. But this time I thought, and the same holds true here. I've got some wonderful stuff coming up with some projects that may require me to make some decisions in fairly short order. However, I'm going to sit on it for a minute, but not just sit like a sitting duck. Use this time to develop the ideas more. This isn't necessarily that if you sign a contract or even consider one during this time that it's going to, bomb. That's not at all what's going on here. Again, it's almost as if the planetary cycles, particularly this retrograde, are giving us permission, or maybe just honking its horn saying, shut the left brain down. This is the time to get into the right brain and into a space of solitude, of introspection, because the very thing that's in your face, there may be another perspective of looking at it if you allow yourself to. In my last conscious commentary, I talked about how when we commit to being in that space of reflection and introspection, that we at some level may actually be calling in what we call our higher self. There are triggers, I think, where we can get into that mode of intuition, not just intuition, but even almost like we become our own oracle. We call in that aspect of us that's less judgmental. Of course, if we're defaulting to the right brain, I think that's what's happening. But it's a great thing that we need to do. Maybe it's a blessing that retrograde happens. What is it, 3 or 4 times a year? I'm not sure. It seems to happen way too much. But I have a new lease on it now. A release. Get it? So there's some really, really interesting things that we might be able to do and harness when it comes to this retrograde period. It is a time also of revelation, revealing. Isn't it interesting we have all these re's coming up with retrograde? Universe speaks to us in myriad ways. It does not speak our language. We have to learn its language. And I suppose the epiphany that I had in this retrograde, I'm going to call it retrograde period, was just that. I found a great article. Here's the other thing I want to bring up. I'm not going to go too much longer, guys, because I'm beat probably from the retrograde and all the reflection I've been doing. Interestingly, something else kind of occurred to me. Now, I consider myself to be relatively intuitive. I wouldn't call myself a psychic superstar by any stretch of the imagination. I happen to think we all have a tinge of intuition and psychic proclivity. I always have. But they tend to come in cycles. And I have always felt that there is probably something in the planetary alignment that is making it more potent at one time than at others. This is one of those times. I've been feeling extraordinarily intuitive lately, and kind of bang on, if you will, with some of the hits that I've been getting and acting on. And so I thought, it would make sense to me that we may actually have an opportunity to tap into that psychic side of ourselves during this period of time. Makes sense to me. If we are going to commit during this period of time to being much more inner directed, how can we not be intuitive, more intuitive? But I definitely felt it. Are you? So lo and behold, rather than just trusting my intuition on that, I had to look it up on Google. And I did. And lo and behold, there were plenty of references to retrograde periods of time as a time for raising the bar of our intuitive side. So check on that. I found a great article. I'm actually going to post it over at Higher Journeys. That came obviously from another website. It's called innerself.com. But I'll go ahead and post part of it on Higher Journeys along with this episode if you're not listening on our YouTube channel, so you can see that as well. It's called The Truth About Mercury Retrograde. It's actually a good thing. Again, synchronistic that my last conscious commentary was on the act of embracing reflection, not realizing retrograde was coming right up. So I do encourage all of you, if you're going through a tough time right now and you're assigning it to this retrograde, try to take your foot off that gas pedal a little bit and focus on the opportunity that it is offering you. Certainly there's some things that cannot be changed, but we certainly have control over how we act on it or think about it. That's huge. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to say. There were a couple of other things, but I think I'm going to leave it there. It's really a singular message. Retrograde, reflect, do it, guys. We need to, with all the stuff going on, can't not make mention and send prayers about 2 tragedies. One that just happened yesterday with the mosque tragedies in New Zealand. I obviously have colleagues in the area, Australia, which is obviously not that far. So I'm sending my thoughts and prayers. What are we dealing with here? And again, happening during Mercury retrograde. This was a horrible, there were 2 mosques, I believe, that were shot up. And as of now, it's said 49 people have lost their lives. Prior to that, of course, the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Also, we don't hear this too often, but, once every, God, you never want to hear it, ever, ever, ever. So, as a matter of fact, I have a friend who knows someone, I know this person as well, that knew 2 of the individuals on that flight, that doomed flight. They were interpreters. Anyway, so yeah, with all of this stuff that's swimming around us, whether it's events in our own lives or larger world events, I dare say we cannot afford to not be in a state of reflection and staying as close with our inner self as possible, because that is our link to source. So let's do that. All right, guys, listen, just quick couple of messages here. I'm so excited. So excited. The final of my Conscious Life Expo film shows will be coming. No, actually, that's not true. I've got 2 shows coming up. But the final one that will be on my channel is Daryl Anka. This is a show that I filmed while out at the Conscious Life Expo last month. Daryl Anka, Channel 4 Bashar, my buddy who I hadn't seen for years. What a great reunion we had. It's a great little chat, only about 30, maybe 45 minutes long. Not too long, because we were both running. I was actually about to introduce him for his talk, his talk for his Bashar channel. So it was a bit rushed, but it was very good. My headphones are falling off. Uh-oh. Hope you can't hear all that. Anyway, that's coming up. Daryl Anka on Higher Journeys TV next Wednesday. Also next week, I had a lovely off camera. This is a camera. I was off camera with David Adair. He gave, guys, let me tell you, I cannot wait until this posts. He gave some testimony and some commentary talking about the moon and some things that he's discovered and how he feels about what may have been kept from us, the truth about what's going on in the moon. This is what we talked about. And I said to him, David, now listen, this is our second interview together. You got to give me something that you haven't given up to anyone else. And he said, okay, I promise. So if you hear it anywhere else, you let me know so I can let him have it. But he gave quite the, what would you say? I'm just going to say commentary, philosophy on what he feels is going on with the moon. We're talking, of course, about the original Rocket Man, David Adair. So that was also filmed on location at the expo. That's coming up next week. That will be by our partners over at Zohar Entertainment Group. Shout out to you guys. Really excited about that. So I will make sure to have a link either way in our YouTube front page channel, so you'll know how to get there. So those are the 2 shows coming up. Listen, speaking of Daryl Anka and David Adair, one more little heads up I want to give you. Did y'all, I don't know who was at the expo that's listening, but I know there are a lot of you that couldn't make it, but not to despair. Now, the expo did this really neat partnership with Gaia. You're familiar with Gaia TV, where they live streamed many of the headliners, workshops, both workshops and lectures, including Bashar that I introduced, including Anita Morjani, including David Adair, Billy Carson, I believe, and others. But guess what I just found out? They had a package where you can get at the time, the live stream, so you could see it as it was going on, plus a year of Gaia for free. Well, guess what? They just told me they've extended the offer. So you can see endless replays of all the action at the Conscious Life Expo, all these great headliners. I'm trying to think of some of the others. They're the main people, I believe. Nassim Haramein, who I also interviewed. Really cool stuff. Lots of content there. This is, stuff that much of it has not been talked about. A lot of the talks that were given were debuted at the expo. So you can plug into that. Go over, I'll put a link. Go over to Gaia, or the link that will bring you ultimately to Gaia. You'll help me out too, by the way, if you do that. That would be a really neat thing. That would support me greatly. I would appreciate that. we're kind of partners in that regard. But I think it's a good deal. Go over, grab the deal. I'm not quite sure how long it's going to last. But again, you will get endless replays, play them as much as you want, of the Conscious Life Expo speakers, along with a free year of Gaia. It's a good deal. I think it's a good deal. I know some people that have done it and they're like, yeah, good deal. So, okay, that's that. I'll have a link for you there. All right, Journeyers, listen, I'm out. It is Friday. As you know, I typically air on Wednesday, but we had a bunch of stuff going on. Hope you had a chance to see the on location quick roundtable we did with Barry Fitzgerald and Steve Mera on UFOs and the paranormal. Are they linked? So there was a lot going on. I got a lot going on. Hence the reason why Conscious Commentary is a couple days late. So we'll get back on track. All right, Journeys. Listen, I will talk to you soon. Make it a blessed day. And make it a day of reflection, a period of reflection. I love you all. Take care now.